Hello everyone, friends. I am glad to see you on the new part of the recap. Be sure to support the video. Enjoy your viewing. Some insects are flying near an incandescent light bulb. The girl who was my neighbor speaks to me with a serious face. I warned you. I was very uncomfortable looking at her, sweat was running down my cheek. Oh, yeah, good. Today's teenagers are still those fruits, I said to myself. The girl, clenching her fists, began to walk away menacingly. There's not much time left before my exam, she told me as she went to the next apartment. I looked at her back and thought. Did she say by any chance that she lives with her mom? I got into a stupor from thinking. My face turned into the face of a vegetable, I scratched my cheek and talked. I'm going to bed earlier tonight. You have to be careful next time. The next moment, the girl holding on to the edge of the table and pushing her desk chair began to sit down at the workplace. Ha, that's right. She was sitting in an empty dirty apartment with her head on the table and her hands covered from the light. I think she really lived without her parents. Will I be able to go to university? It's the middle of the night, lights from several apartments are on in the house. A cockroach runs around the garbage on the floor. The hand of the clock shows the deep night. I'm lying on the bed and looking at the hanging clock. Throwing two hands under his head. I can't sleep. Standing up a little, I think it's probably because a lot of things have passed all day. Besides, there are a lot of things that interest me. Hey. I got up from the bed, leaning on my legs. Maybe ask Cabas, since there is such an opportunity? Hey Cabas. Are you sleeping? Before I can say it, she interrupts me. You're bothering me with questions as often as if you're texting your ex. You almost ruined my mood. This answer makes me uncomfortable. Apparently from the fact that she constantly abruptly appears from I don't understand where, I have already stopped being scared, and in general from whom did she learn such phrases? I was very confused by this. So, she says. Leaning her head back on my bed, she says in a sleepy voice. What do you want to know? I'm sitting looking at this picture and I realize that it's kind of weird. Oh, that? I know that hunters can use their mana. Remembering the girl from the squad, I say. Yes, that's right. And I initially already had a certain amount of this mana. So it turns out that I can use it too? I'm not sure. You don't have enough points yet. She points up with her index finger. I was going to tell you about all this later, when you move up a level and your mana points increase. It's quite difficult to explain in words. Maybe you'll try to find out for yourself? I was sitting in shock that my assistant couldn't tell me the information. What do I need to do then? What? Now? First, close your eyes and put your hands in front of you. She told me. I sighed, closed my eyes, and said, okay. The type of your mana depends on your spiritual power. Therefore, if you want and concentrate, you can use it. She spoke in a calm voice. Okay, so what now? Her locket glowed yellow. Try to concentrate on your spiritual world and imagine that you are the trunk of a tree. I imagined a tree, she was looking at me with a smile on her face, waiting for me to act. A tree? I asked. Yes, a tree, she replied. Then imagine that the nutrients from the roots rush upwards. I imagined the roots and nutrients that sought the roots of the tree. Oh, This confused me, I opened my eye a little and asked. Cabas, are you serious about this? But I didn't have time to finish, as something bright shone from below. When I looked down, I saw that a ball of blue energy had formed in my palms. What? I said in surprise. She was standing behind me and said with a grin on her face. Less than I thought. I was shocked by these events and looked at the ball without understanding what was happening. Repeating a certain action gave you an understanding of the use of mana. I assigned the appropriate skill. A system notification flashes in front of my eyes. Skill formation, successful. Mana control, rank FO. Scared of the notification, I start screaming. What is it? This is your pure mana. I had a mana ball in my hands, which Cabas helped me create. This? Yeah, cool right? Smiling, she began to speak. But in this state, you won't be able to use it yet. The amount of your mana can be increased either by prolonged training or by adding points to your status window. I'm spreading my hands with sweat on my face, finally realized what it all means. That's it? Then I'll train tonight, I shouted. At that moment, menacing knocks sounded on the door. I already knew who would be there. I just came, but it's still fucking noisy because of you. The girl stood in front of my eyes and viciously shouted at me for making noise and not letting her study. I, holding my neck in an awkward position, answer her, I'm sorry. The next day. A gray hangar with several windows. There is a huge forest behind the hangar. Closing the closet with my name on it, raising my hands up, with a joyful mood and a smile on my face, I shout. Home. When I leave, I think to myself, I went to work earlier and fulfilled my norm much faster. I can't believe I'm already going home. However, all the working hours the boss drilled me with his suspicious gaze. With a disgruntled face, I'm holding onto the monster, and the boss is standing behind me. The next moment, the boss looked surprised as I did my job. But when I finished my work with such great speed, his stunned face. It should have been seen. The boss was clearly dissatisfied with the fact that I finished quickly, from this you could see the veins of discontent on his face. I ran away and screamed. In short, the norm is met, so I ran. We need to get home soon. The evil boss, gritting his teeth and frowning, watched me run away and said to himself. That asshole. The soup was on a gas heater, there was a notebook around it, chopsticks and a bowl into which I would pour my soup. I should have at least run into the canteen at the factory. I don't even have sauerkraut, looking at all this and holding shelves for food, I said. There was a mana ball in my other hand. Did I come home too early? By the way, when will the hostess fix this stove? Looking at a normal household stove, under which there was a washing machine, I continued. I won't live long warming one ramen with a gas burner. Well, it can't be helped. The end of the 7th match, there was a sound from the phone. There were sports games. A man in a white suit and a baseball cap starts throwing a ball. The ball is thrown by the athlete Jong Gong Yel. No matter how you look at it, his style of serving is hot. The tournament commentator spoke. It's probably going to hurt like hell if someone gets that. Devouring my noodles, I said. Strike. There was a sound from the phone. Wait a minute, and this? Frozen for a second with noodles in my mouth, I thought about it. Cabas, are you here? Cabas appears from behind again in a sleepy state. Yes, what is it? I know that hunters are able to give their mana to weapons and gunpowder. Remembering various cartridges and weapons covered with mana, I say. Can I do that? Tired Cabas with her eyes closed answers me, of course. Not so much, of course, but thanks to the mana control skill, you can. Taking another portion of noodles with my chopsticks, I clarify. Exactly? If you inject your mana into a solid, then its durability will increase significantly. She gives an example of a stone that transformed into a muscular torso made of stone. Wow, that's how it is. Then, devouring your soup from a bowl. One spoonful, one spoonful. Reaching out with both hands to me, she said. The next moment, after finishing the soup, I put it on the gas stove. I'm going for a walk. Deep in the night, there was a ruined building at the foot of the mountain. On the ledge of this mountain, there was a small house. My poor neighborhood also stood under the mountain. Lights were on from some of the houses. The shop stood on the slope of the mountain, and behind it was a huge forest. Insects that had flocked to the incandescent lamp were beating against it. I was standing with Cabas in a tracksuit, warming up before training. I think that's enough, I replied, looking at the iron can with a carbonated drink. What were you going to do here in the middle of the night? Half asleep Cabas answers me. I don't even know. In school days, I dabbled a little in baseball, looking at the jar I said. Taking the stone in my hand and filling it with my mana. In the end, of course, I quit baseball. Standing in the stance of a baseball pitcher, I began to swing with a serious expression on my face. But still. Cabas was standing behind me, not understanding what I was going to do. I threw a stone with all my strength, which flew into the jar with great speed under the force of my mana. The stone overtook the iron jar with great speed. The stone flew closer and closer. The next moment, the stone tore the jar into pieces, only half of the jar remained. I stood and looked at the jar from which the smoke was coming. Then I directed my gaze to the place where my stone had landed. The stone pierced 1/3 of the tree. Smoke was coming from the tree. There is still gunpowder in the powder horn, I said with a smile on my face. Cabas was standing behind me and didn't understand what was going on. I kept breaking the cans one by one. Sweat flowed from my face, I was very tired and shortness of breath from using mana began. Phew, oh. However, Cabas didn't like it, she was worried about me and my mana waste. Haniel, maybe you can rest a little, she told me with excitement on her face. No, not yet. I answered. The next moment, I was looking at the cans that had been blown to smithereens by my throwing stones. But you've been using mana for your throws for an hour without a break. Haniel, if you overdo it with all this, there may be bad consequences. I didn't care what she said because I knew what I was doing. Putting down another tin can, I listened to her. Taking the stone firmly in my right hand and filling it with mana again, I looked at my goal. Cabas didn't say anything behind me, but it was obvious from her face that she was worried about me. A little more, a little more. Swinging my right arm, I shouted. Throwing a stone with great force, the stone overtook the tin can with great speed. The next moment, the jar shattered into small pieces. Your punches have become more powerful, it can't be. Cabas spoke. Cabas was surprised, looking at me. A system window appeared in front of my eyes, which reported. Repeating a certain action gave you an understanding of the use of mana. I assigned the appropriate skill. I saw the inscription on the system window. Skill formation. Successfully. A crushing blow. Rank F. As I thought, looking at the system window, I answered. A crushing blow, did that hunter then use the same skill? Remembering the hunter with the sword, I said. Cabas, can you explain to me in detail about this skill? Of course, not though, Cabas replied. Approved. I display information about the crushing blow skill. A new information window appeared before my eyes. The name of the skill, a crushing blow. Rank F effect, the application of a powerful blow by concentrating mana in the physical body. Cabas, looking at the information system window, began to speak. So did you figure out a way to get this skill? It looks like that, looking at the window, I said. Before that, I received all my skills either under certain conditions or by repeating the same action. So I thought what would happen if I practiced non-stop. I was pointing my finger up. Ah, looks like you're just lucky. Cabas spoke with an awkward smile on her face. Taking a new stone in your hand and filling it with mana. So now, having received a new skill, right now. Ah, Haniel. Stop. Cabas shouted sharply. Cabas stood in a panic before my eyes. Haniel. What? No strength? Everything is floating. I was starting to fall because I used all the mana. Insects gathered around the street lamp, flying directly at the incandescent lamp. Slowly I began to come to my senses, opening one eye. Suddenly I regained consciousness and sat on my ass. God. Cabas, who was sitting next to her with a calm face, began to speak. Ah, you're awake. In a panic, not understanding what had happened to me, I began to feel my body. And? What happened? Sad Cabas sitting on the bench began to explain to me. This is called loss of consciousness. This is a side effect that manifests itself after excessive use of mana. The next moment, Cabas started screaming very hard. That's why I told you to get some rest. Haniel. Damn you. I, who was sitting on my ass in response to the screams, only apologized. Taking the phone in my hand and looking at the time, I was talking. I was out for an hour. The time on the phone showed 10 p.m. and 16 minutes. What you sow, you reap. Looking at the deep night, I said Cabas. Then finish it and let's go home. Anyway, this is a good solution. I was walking down the long stairs of my poor neighborhood. As always, lights were on from several houses. I kept walking home while speaking in an exhausted voice. By the way, I've been shivering all day today. Passing by the wall on which flyers with advertisements hung, I thought. I feel kind of weird today. Picking up the phone to calm down a little, I said. Well, maybe it's just glitches. When suddenly, during my journey, a strange sound was heard somewhere to the side. I immediately turned in the direction of the alley, while I myself was under the light from the lamp, and thought. What is that sound? At this time, in this alley, behind the wall, a man was crying, trying to drown out his sounds. Quiet. Do something. A man spoke in a deep voice. Damn, it pisses me off. Another man finished, holding a strange black knife in his hand. Two men were standing in front of the girl, one of them threatened with a knife, and the other was already preparing duct tape, apparently in order to tie up the victim. Be quiet. Do you want to die? The man with the knife continued to threaten. Good girl, stay where you are. The one who was holding the duct tape spoke. Hush, hush. Like that. He began to tie up the girl. I, at that time, was already standing around the corner while sweat was dripping on my face. Hell, I've always avoided situations like this. I thought, remembering how my mother said that there were a lot of girls and I was her only one. The first drop of sweat fell to the floor from my face. The best thing, of course, would be to call the police. I thought, still hesitating over my decision. But first, let's see what's going on there. After all, curiosity played a cruel joke on me, and I began to look around the corner to get a better look at what was happening. Hey, tie your hands too. I heard the words from a strange man. Oh. Stop. I thought when I saw the scene unfold. The girl was lying on the floor, with her mouth closed and her hands tied, while she was crying and silent, as she had already resigned herself to her fate. What are we going to do with her? One of the attackers asked. As soon as I saw the girl's face, I immediately remembered. Is this my high school roommate? And what to do now? Come to think of it, she's my neighbor. Despite the fact that my friend was there, it was still difficult for me to make a decision. Oh, well, I don't care. Finally, I decided, starting to go the other way. At this time, the girl continued to lie on the ground, praying in her thoughts. Anyone? Somebody, please help. She had no chance to save herself, especially since the men's words continued to frighten her. She finally shut up. One of them was delighted. We put it in the wheelbarrow. The second one suggested, and at that moment the girl's eyes completely went out, and all that was in her head was this. I want to see mommy. Suddenly, one man felt a light wind in his direction and was surprised. The next moment, he hadn't even had time to turn his head around, as my fist had already flown into his face. It was just like in the movies, the hero appears at the last moment. Take it. I shouted in my head. What? I shouted the next moment when the man I hit was lying unconscious, but the next moment I thought. I managed to control my strength. Turning in the direction of the two men, making the most serious tone, I shouted. Let her go now. Then he drew attention to the man who was lying on the ground. I think that idiot is out for a while. Suddenly, the second villain, who was tying up the girl, began to get a knife from under his jacket. And you don't have the guts. He declared, which scared me. And this one has a knife. I thought, quickly assessing the situation. Get the hell out of here. Thrusting the knife forward, he shouted as if in a drunken voice. Damn, I hate these situations. I meant it would be. Taking a thick metal chain that I found next to me in my hands, my thoughts began to move. But can I? The villain, literally in a second, ran towards me, holding the knife firmly in front of him. His eyes were full of rage, and his teeth were ready to fall out, so hard he was clenching them. One, by the way, is already somewhere at the Tooth Fairy. Making a lunge to the side, I dodged the knife and began to raise my hands, holding the chain in them. Now. I thought with a smile, having fully worked out the plan of further actions. Wrapping the chain around the villain's arm, I said to myself. Channel mana into the chain. Literally the next moment, the man howled in pain. I saw the knife fall out of his hand and I was glad. Excellent. The villain instantly jumped away from me, but the situation was already more favorable for me because his knife was lying behind my back. That jerk. He said, and I continued to stand with the chain in my hands, just like some kind of ninja. I've seen this technique on the internet, but I didn't think I could repeat it so easily in reality. Does physical strength also increase with awakening? I reasoned, trying to understand the essence of my powers. Get the brat. This guy shouted again, raising his fist to strike. His life does not teach him anything. And if I'm right? I kept thinking. Clenching the chain in my fist, I dodged his blow. This time I was already moving more confidently, realizing that I was not weak at all. Seeing a chance to strike, I opened my eyes wide, continuing to think. Crushing. Hit. I shouted in my head and hit the man in the face with all my might, while there was a chain on my fist, from which the blow was much stronger. Die. I finally uttered a word, sending the man flying far away. I heard him groan in pain, while his eyes were already as if they were not a living person. I was sure that he had passed out. Everything went as it should. I rejoiced, in my head, tightly clenching my teeth. The next moment I towered over the villain, waiting for the fight to continue, but all in vain. There were no more enemies, you could call them morgue. I overcame them. I spoke a little abruptly in my voice, while gasping for air. Such a short fight, but the forces did not happen. Finally, I approached the girl and began to untie her hands first, which were bruised, and the next moment he removed the duct tape from her mouth. Hey. Schoolgirl. Are you okay? Is she hurt? I gave her a helping hand, helping her to get up. She continued to cry, apparently still not believing her eyes. Hey. What are you? I asked, scaring about her mental health. Suddenly, the girl threw at my chest, which I did not expect, and flew back, at the same time screaming loudly. I still stood on my feet, hugging the girl, who continued to scream. It's all right. It's all over now. I tried to calm her down. In the middle of the night, the police station continued to work, as it is necessary to protect the lives of residents of the city around the clock. It was already 25 minutes past midnight on the clock. That is, based on your testimony, those people, threatening with a knife, were going to kidnap Mrs. Han Yu-bai, and you Mr. Lee Han-yeol, who happened to be passing by, neutralized them with your bare hands? A policeman asked me while the two men I beat were behind bars. Yes, that's right. I replied in a confident tone. Are you by any chance awakened? The policeman asked the next question, which made me embarrassed and start making excuses. And he has a good sense. I thought and started talking. Oh, that, actually. I've been doing sports lately. I tried to justify myself, but the policeman apparently did not believe me and asked sarcastically. Excuse me? Have a good working day. I said one last thing before leaving the police station. Everything went even too well and I was on my way home again, stretching, because I was insanely sleepy. By the way, I can also be said to be a victim. Did he overdo it? He asked me so many strange questions. Okay, now you can safely go home. I was talking aloud all the time when suddenly I heard the trampling of someone's feet. Kanalapa. The girl I saved screamed and attacked me from behind, hugging me. Are you leaving me alone? With as cute a face as possible, she asked while my thoughts were in a mess. Did she just call me an appa? She just recently choked on tears in a police car, but it seems that now, she has already come to her senses. I still didn't answer her question because I couldn't stop thinking when suddenly another question from her followed. Kanalapa. You're going to take me home, aren't you? I still couldn't stop thinking. I only found out her name when we testified, but she seems to be a nice person. Finally, I gathered my thoughts and answered. Yes, no problem you bye. Suddenly, I opened my eyes and realized. Still, it feels like she's still worried about something. Looking at her hand, I saw how she was shaking, but tried not to show it, just answering. Cool. Shall we go home then? Yeah. We finished the dialogue, continuing to walk along a dark alley, which was illuminated by several lanterns. At the same time, the girl hugged my hand all the time and tried to stay a little behind. After some time, we were already at the entrance to her house. The girl called out to me from behind the door. Come in soon, Appa. All right, you bye. And you come in too. I answered her, waving goodbye. Finally, after all this time, I was at home. This night was too long. After everything that has happened to her, she is still positive. Yubai is a really strong girl. I continued to reason, after all, the human brain was invented for this very purpose. As far as I know, animals don't know how to think. Plopping down on the bed, I finally spoke out loud since there was no one next to me. Now you can rest. At the same time, dust rose from my fall on the bed. I haven't cleaned in a while. It's already too late for the same. I was about to say that it was time to go to bed when suddenly a yellow leaf fell out of my pocket. It fell right on my hand and made me pay attention to myself. The one who planted it apparently loves origami very much. What's it? I asked myself and started opening it. A piece of paper? The most stupid question from me followed since everything was obvious. It was a note that said, "Call me if you're bored." And then there was the phone number. And at the bottom of this note was a small signature. And thank you again. Cute. I thought. Finally, my head was on the pillow. What would the guys say if they saw me in such a situation? Probably, they would have called me a kidnapper and swore at me. Han Yu-bai. Beautiful name. I was already all in my fantasies, the girl made too strong an impression on me. And at the same time funny. I thought, remembering that this is the name of a powerful commander of China. By the way. Cabas, can you show my status window? I asked the girl. Yes, of course. She answered in a sweet voice and brought it out. Name. Lee Han-yeol. Glasses. 10. Level. 2. Strength. 28. Physique. 34. Dexterity. 29. Magic. 10. Luck. 10. Skills. Cabas Defense. U Executioner. F Sword Master. F Mana Control. F Crushing Blow. F Compulsion. F. Looking at my characteristics, I was surprised. Has the level become higher? Coercion? And when did this skill appear? There's been so much going on lately. By the way, tomorrow is a day off at the factory. Maybe take a walk there? I thought and asked myself a lot of questions until in an instant I plunged into the realm of Morpheus. It was finally day outside and the sun was shining on a tall building. There was a sign next to the building with the inscription. Gym. Box. Muay Thai. Suddenly the door opened and the bell that hung on it rang so that you could always hear who came and went. Welcome. The coach started to speak but stopped abruptly, turning his head. "Oh. Haniel." He was surprised, looking at me. "Yes, it's me. How are you?" I immediately asked, a little embarrassed, because of which I threw my hand behind my head. The coach immediately rushed to me and squeezed me in his arms. "Yes, I'm fine. It's been a long time since we've seen each other." He said I've been hugged too much lately. He is, as always, overly friendly. I thought. How many months have already passed? I was already starting to think that you died on one of the missions. He was almost crying, and I tried to calm him down. "Come on." The hall was empty. It seemed that no one does sports nowadays, but my voice continued to be heard around. It's just been a lot of trouble lately. However, now I have decided to start studying again. And the coach answered briefly. "Good." Then he started slapping me on the shoulder with joy. "Don't worry, you can feel at home." I stood still and steadfastly caught all the blows on myself, answering. "Hey, yes, yes. By the way, how is your father?" He immediately asked me. At the same time, a photo from the army, where the coach was with my father, was on his desk. "And this?" "I'm just going to visit him in the hospital later." I answered and heard. "Ugh, how did he catch a sore like that?" "Okay, then tell him hello from me." The teacher finished and I answered, "Absolutely," after which the voice of another man was heard. "Manager." The man immediately turned around and began to hurry. "Yes, I'm already running." He was shouting, and I just stood there and looked at it sweetly. He's a good man after all. And he gives me free use of the gym, and in my childhood he taught me to play baseball in general. I was thinking, looking at the invert in the hall and saw a rope. I immediately picked it up. It will be necessary to help him clean up the gym before leaving. The next moment, I started showing my level by jumping rope like a real boxer. But, for a while I had enough, after a while I was already suffocating, greedily grabbing air. Beads of sweat rolled down my face, and steam came out of my mouth. Suddenly, a system window with the inscription appeared in front of my face. The formation of the skill is successful. Improved physical strength. I was glad of it. I assumed all this to some extent, but it's amazing that I spent only 2.5 hours. Stretching my shoulders a little, I shouted. "Then now you can do the cleaning." Seoul National University Hospital. They look too gorgeous. A huge building with a huge fence. The elevator door opened on the 6th floor. "Oh my god," the girl behind the counter exclaimed. "Hello, Haniel." She turned to me with respect. "Ah, Nurse Kim." I answered her in the same way. "How is my father today?" I turned to her hopefully. She immediately handed me a piece of paper and a pen. "Unfortunately, it is difficult to say anything yet. Sign here, please." As if with a sense of guilt, she replied. I sighed heavily. As I thought. "But, still, I am very glad that you are taking care of him, Nurse Kim." I thanked her and signed a paper with consent to admission to the intensive care unit. "Oh, come on," she replied with embarrassment. The next moment, I gave her the paper and said. "All the other doctors have rejected my father, but not you." The girl was glad to hear that. "Thank you for such kind words. Then please go there." She pointed with her hand into the corridor. "Oh, good," I answered. Suddenly, I got a message on my phone and I immediately took it out. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll check the text message quickly," I said, laughing. "It's not a big deal," the nurse answered. I got a message from a guy. At the same time, there were two of them. First, return the money. Second, ignoring me. I immediately thought. That bastard. I've already sent him money. What is this time? "Haniel, is something wrong?" The nurse asked sweetly, which caused me confusion. "Oh, no. It's all right." As if I tried to justify myself to her. "I'm just not going to pay attention to it yet," I decided, on the way to my father in the intensive care unit. The building in Ward 603. Going inside, I saw my father, who was lying on a cot and was connected to a life support system. Also, there was a dropper next to him, which poured a physical solution into him. Everything was fine on the computer. There is a pulse, which means the heart is beating. "Father," I said regretfully, looking at the unconscious man. "Nurse Kim." I turned to the girl. "Yes?" she asked with embarrassment. "How many hours has he been sleeping lately?" I asked the question confidently. The girl closed her eyes and answered. "Starting this week, around 14. I put my hand on his. Then it turns out that I don't have much time left. I said these words out loud, which surprised the nurse. "Excuse me?" Continuing to sit next to my father, I continued. I accidentally overheard the doctors talking last time. The girl immediately became alert but did not answer, continuing to listen. Every day the number of hours that my father spends sleeping will increase. And when it reaches 24 hours, he will no longer be able to open his eyes again. I continued to stay in the hospital, worrying about my father's health. It's been 4 years since my father suddenly fell ill. At that time, the doctors did not know the cause of the disease or the method of treatment. They only assumed that it was some kind of cancer. All these 4 years we have tried both anti-cancer and clinical treatment, but all this only helped to prevent further deterioration of health for a while. The father began to open his eyes, but now every time the number of hours he spent in a dream increases. Suddenly, I got to my feet and said, "Nurse Kim, I think I'll go." At the same time, I stood as confidently as possible, as if nothing terrible was happening, which made the girl surprised. "What? Already?" she exclaimed, after which she continued in a calm tone. "But, Haniel, it's the first time you've come to see your father in such a long time. Maybe stay with him a little longer. It hasn't even been 10 minutes since you arrived." But despite her persuasion, I sternly replied, "No. On the contrary, I think that if my father had known that I had come at such a time, he would have told me that I was only causing unnecessary trouble. Besides, my presence next to him will not be able to cure him." Already standing in front of the nurse and having finished speaking, I grinned at her. "Haniel." She uttered my name with embarrassment, not daring to speak further. Therefore, the next time I already left the ward, throwing in the last, "I will go." Before I managed to get far away, the nurse still decided to ask, "Haniel, you are by chance?" She began, and after making sure that I was listening, she continued. "Do you happen to know a way to treat with magic?" She finished saying her question, which surprised me. "A way to treat magic?" Seeing my surprise, the girl began to explain. Now it is considered a new method of treating patients in medical circles. This method is used by awakened people with the gift of healing. Of course, from the financial side, it will be problematic, but I am. The girl tried with all her might to convince me and give me hope, but I interrupted her. "Nurse Kim, thank you so much for your concern. But I will find a way to cure my father myself." I finished without even turning in her direction and continuing to leave. "But..." The girl persisted, trying to continue her monologue, but I was unshakable. "Besides, I don't want to give you any extra trouble, you've been taking care of my father for 4 years already." I was talking. "Haniel." The nurse said my name again. I thought she would never leave me alone. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." I smiled, trying to finish this conversation already, as he began to annoy me. Sitting already at home, I talked to myself. That's what I told Nurse Kim. But who told me to say that? How am I going to find a way of treatment, even if the doctors don't know it? At first, we need to look for that method with the use of magic, which Nurse Kim spoke about. I clicked on the computer mouse. The next moment I sat down at the computer. Why doesn't it turn on again? I was indignant, because how can my friend let me down? Suddenly, I kicked the computer, they say, so it should work, while shouting at the whole house. Everything, damn it, doesn't work. But still, this method worked. No wonder my grandfather told me that he was my grandfather. Oh. Turned on. I was surprised. Suddenly, I found a link on which it was written. Magic treatment. An unusual way of modern medicine. A method that awakened ones with a healing skill can use. Is this a case? I thought about it and the next moment I said. Kabak. Suddenly a girl appeared, a living embodiment of the system. "Yes, did you call me?" she asked sweetly. "I'm talking about a skill that treats people's illnesses. Can I master such a skill?" I asked without a doubt, to which the girl, closing her eyes, replied. I don't know. I think if understanding this skill satisfies the conditions, then why not?" While she was explaining this to me, a cockroach ran on the table next to her. "And what is so small?" she asked, but I didn't listen to her further, exclaiming at the explanation. "Really?" Examining the cockroach, the girl continued to explain. "However, no matter what, even if you have enough understanding of this skill and you have received this skill, to use it, it is necessary that your level is higher than the current one." She was still talking when suddenly the cockroach spread its wings to take off. "Ah, that's it?" Thinking for a while, I replied, continuing to look at my computer monitor. "Then, for starters, I need to raise my level." I understood and started typing the following query in the Goggles search engine. "A porter's paradise. While Cabas was chasing a cockroach all over my room, I kept talking out loud. As I thought. All the porters' seats are already occupied this week. How is it? There's not even a single place? There was no limit to my sadness, nothing could cheer me up, but then I remembered. And if you call him? I pulled my hand to the phone with the broken glass. The next moment, the other line was already answered. Hello. This is Haniel. Can you talk now? Mani? There is no Thesu Ajashi. Are there no more jobs left for porters this week? I asked my interlocutor, while Cabas continued her fight with the cockroach. Tomorrow before noon? Of course I can. I replied happily. Yes. Thank you very much, Ajashi. I was finishing the conversation and was glad because I found a job. The ant at this time decided not to run away from my system, but to take the fight. What scared Cabas that she shook as other cockroaches began to climb out from under the table. It was no longer a fair one-on-one fight. Then I'll see you tomorrow morning. I finally finished my conversation. Thank God. I exhaled with relief, while to my left, 3 cockroaches rushed into battle at supersonic speed. The next moment I turned to Cabas, who was dishonored and lying at the door, almost unconscious. By the way, what are you doing? I asked her with interest. The next day came, the sun was shining brightly outside. In fact, the worst time to go for a walk is because it is very hot. By the position of the sun, it could be said that it was already lunch. Someone's finger rang my doorbell. Lying on my bed, I almost fell off it because of the loud sound. What? I exclaimed. Yes. Already opening the front door. I said, thinking at the same time. Who was brought in so early? When I opened the door, I just saw a gorgeous view of the city, and that's it. There is no one. I was surprised. Maybe the kids are kidding. Walking back to the room, I said to myself and suddenly noticed something new in my house. What is this? Banana milk. And a note? Who managed to leave it on my doorstep? Opening the note, I began to read. Kana Laj. No, Hanalapa. Thank you. For saving me then. To be honest, I do not know how to thank you for your help. But I decided to bring my favorite banana milk. Thanks again so much for saving me. And below the signature. Han Yu Bai. Oh, that girl. I said, opening the milk bottle. But the next moment I realized that I was a fool and pierced the top with a tube. Charm. Standing on the threshold of my house, I drank milk and talked. Let's spend the same energetic and fun day today. At the same time, the girl stood around the corner and listened to my words, smiling at the same time. Literally after a while, I was already standing at the bus stop near my house. Dressed in a brown jacket and shoes of the same color, as well as black pants. Time goes by so slowly. He's coming. I noticed the car, which I had been waiting for all this time. It seems like the driver was hurrying to me, but so much time has passed. Hey Haniel. I heard from the slightly open car window. Have you been doing well all this time? A middle-aged man with gray hair asked. Oh, yes, it's all thanks to you. I replied respectfully. I'm sorry for calling so abruptly yesterday. A little embarrassed, I decided to apologize right away because despite the fact that it was late, the man still answered me and found a job. Hey, come on. I'm always happy to work with you. He answered cheerfully and continued. Sit down quickly. Let's go get some gear. After a while, we were already in a public institution in Seoul, which looked extremely cool. The architectural work immediately caught the eye, as the building was of an unusual shape. I couldn't even imagine how many people were working on it. Getting out of the car, the man immediately said. I'll go get a car to transport the material then. See you later. Waving his hand at me, the man began to leave and I said in response. Yes, good. Some time later I was in the maintenance department of the porters, namely in the office number B305. Are you gentlemen Lee Han Yil, Choi Chun Hong and Kim Han? The girl spoke. There were 3 other guys standing next to me, one slightly taller, the other slightly shorter, and the girl continued. A porter from the A007 team going on a mission at 9 a.m. today? We answered at the same time. Yes, that's right. First, let's go through identification. Please follow me. She said, while looking completely unshaken and tortured. At one point, I even felt sorry for her, but I answered everything. Good. So, here are all the necessary things and weapons. She said when we were in a restricted area. Submachine gun 3 pieces, 5.56mm cartridges 2 boxes, frame backpack 4 pieces. Please check if everything is in order and get your personal chainsaws. Since you have been here for more than a year, I think there is no need to explain to you the rules and procedure for the delivery of equipment. By the way. Mr. Lee Haniel? Suddenly she asked me. I immediately stood at attention and exclaimed. What? Me? I don't know what happened there, but the equipment you used last time is now in unusable condition. We had to do a lot of work after that. Oh, that? I immediately remembered in my head. We will be very grateful to you if the equipment remains intact this time. At the same time, while saying all this, she was issuing a murderous intent. Oh, yeah. I'll be careful. I answered right away. Monster spawn zone. However, the most important thing is your safety. Suddenly she calmed down and continued. I wish you to return safely. After a while. Monster spawn zone. Kanwodo, near the demilitarized zone. Skip it. The same man who hired me told the security guard of this zone. At the same time, we were already driving a military vehicle. We didn't have any problems with the passage and the next moment we drove on. Finally arrived. A man stopped the car. Let's start our hunt now. He said when we got out of the car, holding a gun in our hands.